If you are over the age of 25, chances are you've probably seen a friend post on Facebook about their brand new small business, or had a family member reach out asking you to come to a party they were having. The only catch was that the small business your friend was promoting was actually LuLaRoe leggings, and the party you were invited to was actually hosted by a Mary Kay lady. The common denominator? MLMs, multi-level marketing companies. Businesses that say they make their money from selling products, but in reality seem to make their money by recruiting new sellers. This is Rich Girl's Guide, where we demystify the world of personal finance to help you create a financially successful and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Kirby Delicano, and I worked in wealth management for over 6 years before leaving the office to focus on my business and my family. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Kirby, we all know that MLMs are bad. It's nearly impossible to make any money selling their products, and nobody actually falls for that stuff anymore. Are you sure about that? I actually had a different episode planned for today, but just a few weeks ago, I found myself cornered by none other than an MLM recruiter. It has been years since I have been approached by any MLM salesperson or been invited to a party selling items. So this conversation really threw me for a loop. Not only was this a person I had literally just met that day, we met in a professional setting. Now, I don't want to give too much away about this individual, even though I don't think they're going to see this, but essentially we were both hired as professionals to work an event. About halfway through the event, this individual approached me and started talking at me, completely out of the blue, and was trying to sell me on their skincare routine. Now, obviously, I'm wearing makeup right now, so you can't really tell, but my skin is quite clear. I get the occasional pimple, of course, but for the most part, I have really good skin thanks to genetics. This person kept talking at me for several minutes while I was just kind of standing there nodding with a weird look on my face, not saying anything at all, and then they whipped out their phone and started showing me before and after pictures. Before they could get too far along in their whole spiel, another individual came over to ask them a question, and you better believe I booked it the F out of there. But it got me thinking. We were both hired to work this event. Our hourly rate was quite high compared to selling the skincare. So why was she trying to recruit me? If it was a money thing, the obvious answer would be to book more gigs like the one we were hired to do that day. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to realize this individual was probably sold some kind of dream, a dream to work from home where they wouldn't have to leave their kids to work an event like we did that day. A dream where all they had to do was post a few times on social media before customers would be knocking down their door and the money would be flowing. If you have ever been cornered like this, or if you were part of an MLM or just have any MLM story, please drop a comment below and let me know. Are MLMs just thinly veiled pyramid schemes? Or did you make enough money to retire early and buy a yacht? I know, jokes aside, but seriously, I do want to know. Just in case you need a refresher, MLMs, multi-level marketing companies, rely on direct sales tactics to push their products. Instead of having their items for sale on the shelves of Target or Ulta, they generally rely on salespeople, usually named something like a beauty consultant, marketing partner, or, get this, a cause entrepreneur. Nope, I am not making that last one up. For simplicity, I'm just going to call them sellers throughout this episode. In my opinion, modern day MLMs feature 3 distinct characteristics. 1, they offer a product generally at a price that is marked up significantly from similar products that are sold from non-MLM companies. Here are just a few examples. Monet, Rodan & Fields, One Hope Wine, Mary Kay, and Olivita. Now, technically you can purchase these products directly from the company website. This is something that sellers and MLM employees frequently point to as a foolproof reason that their company is not, in fact, a pyramid scheme. But how much of total company sales come from the website, from people that aren't affiliated with the company, compared to direct sales? And how much product is purchased from everyday consumers versus the sellers themselves? We'll get to that in a bit. The second characteristic that these companies all have in common is the fact that anyone can become a beauty consultant, a market partner, and even a cause entrepreneur. There is no interview process, there are no qualifications needed. All you need to do is buy their starter pack or boss bundle, and voila, you are now a consultant or entrepreneur or whatever fancy title they cooked up. The bottom line is they make it really easy to get started. Or, in my opinion, easy to fall prey to. And not only do they allow anyone to join, many of these companies will reward consultants with bonuses and extra commissions by recruiting more sellers to be in their downline. How do they recruit new sellers? Great marketing, a promise of easy money because they have products that essentially sell themselves, or some kind of new tactic, like a partial donation to charity, for example. Lastly, these companies are not transparent in any way, shape, or form. From the get-go, they have pages and pages of information on their website about success stories, how wonderful it is to be a consultant, how you aren't required to purchase products for parties, frequently asked questions that typically explain how they aren't a pyramid scheme, but there's little information on how much money an average seller makes, how long sellers actually stay with the company, or how much debt they get into before they finally give up and leave. Because these kinds of companies are privately owned, they are not required to give out pertinent business information like public companies are required to do. Remember how I said earlier that it would be interesting to know how much money was made from sales to non-sellers versus the sellers themselves? We actually don't know the answer to that because the companies don't have to tell us. And most of them don't. One of the companies I mentioned earlier, Rodan & Fields, decided to start sharing an income statement in an effort to be more upfront with their sellers and their customers. While I think the income statement is incredibly misleading, you can hop over to YouTube, I will show it here. The entire front page that has all of the actual figures only accounts for paid consultants, which they admit excludes consultants who did not make any sales. This at least gives us something to go off of. Now, the first thing that really popped out at me was this sentence. The typical paid consultant earned $366 annually. Typical consultant earnings show the median earnings of all consultants who were paid in 2022. So to be clear, the median earnings of all consultants who actually made a sale was slightly more than $1 a day. On the other side of this income statement, they state that of the 197,000 consultants, yes, you heard that correctly, only 67% of consultants actually made a sale. So the median earnings of $366 a day only includes the top 67% of consultants. As a side note, using the median figure is quite odd to me. I would think that a mean or average would make more sense, but maybe not, because as you can see right here, the highest income amongst the top 0.4% of the paid consultants is a whopping $1,879,027. Now, I don't have any proof of this, but the thought that immediately popped into my head was, what are the chances that these top sellers who would have had to get in on the business from the ground floor in order to rack up a median teen customer count of 21,775. What are the chances that those are family members or friends of Dr. Rodan and Dr. Fields?
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
I honestly don't know, and I'm really not trying to ruffle any feathers, so I am not going down that rabbit hole today. What I will say is that their business, previously a normal brick and mortar business that was bought by Estee Lauder, was not doing so hot until the two founders purchased back their business and implemented the MLM model. An MLM model that, according to their website, only costs $95 to get started as a consultant. And with 197,000 consultants having to buy in at $95 a pop, they are already looking at nearly $19 million in consultant investments, before taking any other sales into account. One last thing before I move on. If there are 197,000 consultants, who exactly are you marketing these products to? Maybe it's someone who would normally go to Ulta or Sephora to shop for skincare products, which, by the way, there are only 1,385 Ulta locations and 1,477 Sephora locations within the US. Which would mean there are 68 times more Rodan and Fields consultants than Ulta and Sephora stores combined. I don't know about you, but to me, it seems like it would be pretty hard to make any sales in a market that already has so many sellers. Now, I really don't mean to pick apart this one company. To be honest, the only reason I picked them is because they are one of the few MLMs that actually give out this much information. If you want a real deep dive into MLMs, I would highly recommend listening to the Dream podcast, hosted by Jane Marie. I actually binged the entire first season a few years ago when it was released. I believe it was back in 2018. It was absolutely fascinating, and I recently revisited the first season for reference for today's episode. Here were my top takeaways. There are very few sellers that make money from selling MLM products. Jane interviewed a woman named Danielle, who has been selling 31 products, think bags, lunchboxes, monogrammed items, for 6 years. Now, Danielle is a hustler. She had been named the #1 seller in the state of Michigan multiple times. At one point, she was the top recruiter across the entire company. And at the time of this interview, she had 170 people in her downline. In other words, very few people made it to Danielle's level. And she made a whopping $42,000. Yep, in just 1 year. And don't forget, she's her own boss babe, which means there's no 401k, no healthcare, no paid time off. 42 grand before taxes as one of the top sellers in the company. Unfortunately, Danielle is one of the few success stories, if you want to call that a success story, to come out of any MLM company. At best, you are only out the initial investment, which can range from $50 to $500. And at worst, you can take on thousands of dollars of debt, like the anonymous caller who put in $25,000 trying to sell Herbalife. She never received a single sale before finally pulling the plug. There were many more stories of people getting taken advantage of, family members forcing them to sit through sales presentations, and all around predatory marketing towards those who were looking to earn a quick buck. Unshockingly, the owners of these companies have had huge political allies over the years. Think Trump and Reagan. And they pay a lot of money to have their interests lobbied. Betsy DeVos, the former Secretary of Education, her father-in-law was the founder of Amway, one of the biggest MLMs in history. If this episode does anything, I hope that it reaches at least one person who is thinking about joining an organization that makes bold claims, that promises financial freedom, and that has higher up sellers trying to sell you on this dream. And maybe you'll just give it a second thought before jumping all in. And if this somehow reaches the individual who cornered me the other week, please take this as my official rejection to join your MLM. Next week, I want to give you some actual ideas for extra income, things you can do to bring in money on the side without getting caught up in an MLM. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button or follow wherever you are listening. Later, rich girls.